1:30. Yeah.
More or less.
Which is volunteer.
It's easy. Yeah.
Welcome. We're gonna get this presentation moving along. So you're enjoying a wonderful lunch today from Cross Country Mortgage. They have Dave Malott, Kendall, and Jackie here, and we'll let them talk to you for a few moments and share what's happening in the lending world.
How's everybody doing today? We got an exciting topic today, right? The other couple things I want to talk about, and they're becoming more and more popular, and we've kind of made our rounds with different offices and talked to different people, but does anybody know what non-QM loans are? Has anybody ever had any success with them? Anyone? Yeah, that's one of the loan programs. So non-QM loans are going to be loans that would basically, I would consider them, they're normal loans, but it's everything but this one thing. And it could be the type of income they qualify for. It could be maybe, they have 1099 income, maybe it's for investment properties. But we're seeing a lot of success with these loan programs. So if you're not, I don't want to use the word in the know, but if you don't have any knowledge of them, see one of us either after today or give us a call. Because there are going to be ways that you can qualify more buyers to help you close more transactions. I've seen it in my business here probably over the last several months since we switched to cross country. It's no secret that we're with Homespire. We all moved cross country, and that's one of the big things for us. We even went to Nancy's office and talked about this. But that is one of the biggest advantages that we have right now. We're not only the #1 retail lender in the country, but we're also the #1 non-QM lender in the country. We're local. A lot of people think, oh, well, where's your office? We're building a brand new office here in Martinsburg. And we're just going to be, very heavily present with different types of loan products for your clients. But, Jackie?
One of the things that I want to talk about is maybe some of your lower income buyers. Since we are a full service lender, we can help you with the non-QM products. But locally, we do partner with all of the programs that might be low income, considered low income, such as the HAP program, the Housing Assistance Program with the city of Martinsburg, which covers 3 counties, up to $24,500 worth of a grant. So it can be a hard fit, but we can definitely see if your client, if that would work for them, as well as West Virginia Housing. There's a flyer there from Kendall with West Virginia Housing. Those two can be, paired up together. You can do both within one transaction. And then we're seeing a lot of success with USDA right now. So USDA in the past, I think, had a really small box to fit our clients into, but now it's just, we're seeing that open up a little bit and approving a lot of clients that didn't used to fit USDA into that USDA program. And I know for a fact that like Rocket Mortgage doesn't process any USDA loans. So if they have a Rocket Mortgage pre-approval, they could be, missing some loan options available to them, maybe to get in the home for less money. So let us know what you got. If there's any no's, if there's anything that we can help you with, any questions, we're definitely here to help.
Question.
Yeah.
I don't keep up with the news much, but with the government shutdown, will that affect those kinds of monies?
So.
I'm sorry. No, you're fine. So just so you know how USDA loans work. So we process the loans, we underwrite the loans. The USDA actually issues those loan commitments towards the end of the process. That is where the problem lies right now. So if the loan is at the end of the process, so let's say you've got a client that's pre-approved USDA right now, and they go and make an offer, and it's a 45-day close. Could the government still be closed in 45 days? Absolutely. Could the government be open the end of this week? Absolutely. So I would not be afraid to, #1, accept USDA offers or work with clients who are USDA pre-approved, because where you're going to run into the issue is the loan commitment. I've got with Angela right now, we're in a holding pattern, and it's nothing the clients did, we've done. It's just unfortunately until that loan commitment is issued from the USDA, that loan can't be cleared to close. But as far as, if I would tell you, if you had a client that's USDA right now, and the sellers are willing to do a 45-day close, maybe a little bit longer close period, that's probably gonna be your best friend right now for those type of loans. So, yeah. Yeah. All right, guys, enjoy it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for lunch.
Yes.
As always, thank you to Cross Country for being great affiliates to bring us our lunch today. So I'd like to welcome Lydia Butts and Kimberly Stake from the Berkeley County Health Department. So it's a great opportunity to have them in front of us and talk about septic systems in West Virginia. So welcome, and
Thank
we'll
you.
turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'm Kim. Or Kimberly, whatever you want to call me. So this is not meant to insult anybody's intelligence. There is an inspector at the health department who was born and raised in the city, and she came to West Virginia and knew nothing about septic system. No idea what they did. She's now our supervisor, so she apparently learned something along the way. Anyway, so it's just a real basic on how a septic system works. Household wastewater collects in the tank. Solids settle to the bottom, and then the lighter materials float to the top as scum. Bacteria in the tank breaks down waste. The treated liquid called effluent flows out to a drain field, and a drain field is usually a series of trenches with varying materials. I'll show you some pictures in a bit, that disperse the liquid into the soil, and then there's microorganisms that kind of work on the effluent to purify it, and it just filters down through the soil until it eventually goes back into the water table underground, and they show the well, is drawn from that water table. To me, it's an absolute miracle that dirt that's dirty filters water and makes it clean. Okay, so that's just very basic. These are the 2 state codes that we follow and enforce. I'll start with the one at the bottom, the 64 CSR 9. That's the one that basically says, I'm really paraphrasing and cutting it down short. Every residence must have, dates back to 1983, so bear that in mind. Every residence must have a toilet and some kind of sewage system hooked up to the toilet. And then 64 CSR 47, you can Google these. You can find them online. I believe on the,
You can go to either our website to find them, or you can also go to the legislature's page and search.
yeah. So 64 CSR 47, those are what we call the design standards. It literally tells you exactly how a septic system needs to be designed, how big the tank needs to be, where the tank needs to be placed, how big the field needs to be, how many or not how many trenches, but square feet of trenches and so on and so forth, goes into all the details. So we refer to those a lot. Okay, so the important things you need to know, first and foremost, there are no grandfather rules, laws, clauses, whatever pertain to any program the health department regulates. So, if something is not up to code, just because it was put in 1970 or whatever, doesn't mean that it gets to stay that way. There are situations where an inadequate septic system would need to be brought up to today's current standards. It's usually like when there's a repair being done, or there's some different situations. I won't get into that right now, but anyway. The health department didn't start keeping records until 1970, so anything built or installed before that, they're not necessarily have records on it, unless there has been a repair or modification to the system since then. Codes were created in '83. I believe they were updated in '98, but most of what we have dates back to '83. And it's likely that if the system was installed before the code was established, the system is probably not up to today's current standards and may need to be brought up to today's standards. Now, we don't go around policing, inspecting people's, just randomly inspecting people's septic systems to see if they're up to code. Usually what happens is if somebody applies for a building permit to add a bedroom or something like that, that's when they're gonna end up having to bring the system up to today's current standards. And sizing of septic systems is based on the number of bedrooms and not occupancy. If 2 people live in a 4-bedroom house, the size of the system is still based on 4 bedrooms because the 4 bedrooms ultimately determines occupancy, potential occupancy for the home. And some more stuff. By code, we have 21 business days from the submittal of any septic request to complete the work and have it back to you. So please keep that in mind when, if you know that closing is supposed to be in the next couple weeks, but something needs to get done, repair needs to be done or something like that. We do our best to get to stuff in a timely manner, but we really have no control over the workload. The last few weeks, we have been slammed. Not really sure why, it tends to just kind of come in waves, and sometimes weather, good weather, bad weather, makes the workload vary. And weather conditions greatly impact our ability to get out and do what we need to do. Snow, rain, extreme heat advisories, those are conditions where we typically don't go out and inspect new systems or do evaluations, or get required information to issue a permit. And it's our job to protect the groundwater, and our decisions may not always be what you want to hear, but we make them in the interest of the environment, but also in the interest of the property owner or a, future property owner. Okay, how a realtor can protect a buyer or seller. On a lot with an existing septic system, you can have an evaluation done by the health department and a certified septic installer. Now, the health department, we can only observe above ground and what's happening. So if we don't see something that looks like the septic is failing, usually it's smelly, squishy, ground where the drain field is. So we can only see above ground, but if you hire a septic installer that has a camera, they can snake the lines and actually see what's going on underground. And they find cracked pipes, they find, tree roots, all kinds of stuff. Not always, but, worst case scenarios. And we don't recommend using a pumper truck company to do a septic evaluation, because a lot of times that's all they do is just pump tanks. They may not be familiar with the whole, the whole system. And then their perspective also will not likely hold up in court. We actually had a situation where in a court case, the guy who kept pumping a tank way too often, like it was monthly, every few months.
Yeah, every couple of weeks he was pumping a tank and there was a sizing issue. So he tried to get the pumper truck company to go to court with him, saying it was okay, but it ended up not holding up the judge that he ruled it in.
And then Lydia will talk a little bit more specifically about what these things are, but on an undeveloped lot with no septic system, you can have a perk test done and the lot basically pre-approved for a specific type of septic system. Now, there are a lot of blank lots, I don't know what you guys call them, but lots that have not been built on in the county that were approved, possibly years ago. We can do research on particular lots to see if we have any records, especially in subdivisions like, I'll use Round Top, for example. There's still lots there that have not been built on, but many of them were approved in the past years ago. And once that approval is in place, it stays. It does not change as long as you don't move the septic reserve area. And then the same goes for a percolation test. Once the perk test is done, which, by the way, if you don't know, a perk test it checks the permeability of the soil, like how quickly water will drain. We have to, make sure that water's not just going to stand there for days or weeks on end and not drain through the soil. Perk tests don't expire either. Once the perk test is done and the minutes are determined, it lasts basically forever, unless you move the septic reserve area on a lot. So, but I'm gonna go over the video now. Not her. Cover some of these things in more detail.
So I'm going to go into some of the services that we offer at the health department. So talking, going off of how Kim was saying about the evaluation, there's a couple different instances when we do an evaluation. If someone wants to add, you know, build onto their home, go from say a 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom. If they think their system's failing, sometimes people will come to us, and you know, want us to kind of take a look first before they go the route of a septic installer. Which if they do, and if we don't see it from above ground in our letters, we do recommend getting with a septic installer, so that they can snake the lines to see what's going on underneath. Sometimes, a septic can be put into the ground and then they end up not building right away. So engineering will require a letter from us, stating what that system is good for and if they can use it. And then also we've had people that are either buying or selling. Sometimes the buyer will want something from us stating that we don't see any failures or that it's sized adequately for that home. They just want to have something in writing. And that picture was of a system that was in the ground. We didn't have any records for, and it was a failure. As you can see, the whole trench is filled with water. And I say water, effluent. So percolation tests are done when someone wants an approval for a lot, especially one that's not been developed yet, or we don't have any records for. So a certified septic installer will perform the test and they turn in the application with us. When we go out for a site visit, they will dig for us a 6-foot hole that we evaluate. And we also look where they've performed the perk test. The perk test is performed at the depth of the system that they're proposing. The 6-foot hole allows us to observe within the 10,000 square foot reserve, kind of the soil makeup that's there. We look for rock, water, mottling, and mottling is I believe I'll have a picture, but it's a gray area that shows up from a high water table. So we'll also not only look at the soil in the hole, we look at the whole area. We consider slope, any rock outcrops, are kind of the main 2 things. And then from all of that, we go back to our office, we do a little research. We use a web soil survey to get the specific soil type. And then we use the soil type book for Berkeley County to get a little more information on the type of soil. So here we have a couple pictures. On the top right corner is a white area that was in the corner of a 6-foot hole. That is the mottling that I was describing. As you can see, around the white is a red-orange clay. I actually observed that hole. The hole looked great, but then down at the bottom was all of the white mottling from a high water table. This lower picture here on the left is of a perk hole, and it's hard to see, but there is water at the bottom of it. And then the 2 pictures at the top are showing shale in a hole, and then on the bottom right is just the different layers of soil. In another hole, it had a good color variation.
And most of these are things we don't want to see.
Yes, yes, these are bad examples.
I know Berkeley County, so.
Yes. So a little bit about a septic install, for the permit process, whether it's for a whole system or a repair or adding on to it. You know, if it's for a new install and we have the perk results, they can turn that in. The main thing is when we go out for a permit approval, we want to see everything staked out. The picture is little, it's hard to see, but this installer, he had everything staked. He had where the septic tank was going. The 3 lines kind of going out into the field are where his trenches were going. That way it gives us an idea of what they're planning to do so we can help visually see it when we go. When we go out, we actually do take GPS coordinates. We take GPS coordinates of the SRA, where the septic tank's going, and also for a well permit, we take GPS coordinates of that. That way, you know, if something comes up in the future, we're able to go out and find it. We've also had, within the last couple years, a well got drilled on the incorrect property. The builder moved the stake, so when we had permitted it, it was in the correct spot. So we were able to see from our GPS coordinates that the stake was moved after we made the site visit for the permit approval. So then once we go out, get those GPS coordinates, we go back to the office, we review all the information, and then we write up the permit so it's sized appropriately for whatever is needed. And once the permit is issued, it is good for 1 year from that date. Our permits are not transferable. So whoever applies for that permit, it's only good for that specific person. If that person doesn't build or someone else buys it within that year time frame, if it changes ownership, then that new person will have to reapply for a whole new permit, and then the process starts over. We'll make another site visit for GPS coordinates, and then we'll go back and rewrite the permit up for that new owner. Our septic systems, we generally class them between a class 1 and a class 2. Are the main categories. A class 1 system is the conventional type of system. This is when our soil options are perfect, or more optimal, I guess is the better word. There's no high water, no mottling, excessive rock, or any other limitations we might see. Class 1 systems will include your chamber systems, pipe and gravel, easy flow, gravelless pipe are the more common options. We then get into a class 2 system. The big key point of a class 2 system is it must have 2 acres. If the lot is smaller than 2 acres, we will not generally approve for a class 2 system. We have had a couple instances where the lot may be smaller than 2 acres, and the system was failing, and we have approved for a class 2. That kind of is usually the only standpoint where if it's a new build and it's less than 2 acres, we won't approve for a class 2 if it's needed. And of course, we choose a class 2 when the soil conditions aren't great. Sometimes a class 2 system will require a pump system, which then requires a high water alarm. The high water alarm lets the homeowner know that the pump isn't functioning as it should. We often get questions about high water alarms, so we just wanted to include that. Sometimes class 1s will have a pump system on them as well, though. It depends on how far out the drain field is from the location of the home, or if it needs to go uphill, it may require a pump. And oftentimes class 2s are more expensive than a class 1 due to the amount, the extensive amount of work it takes to put them in. We do not control those prices. That is all up to the septic installers. So some of the class 2 systems include an Elgin, a sand mound, an LPP, which is a low pressure dose system. Those are the more common ones. So here we have a couple pictures. On the top left corner, the blackness in the trench is a chamber. A chamber is essentially just a plastic piece of dome. The middle picture looks like just a regular,
I think that's gravelous pipe.
I was gonna say, I think that's graveless pipe.
It's a strange little plastic pipe that just goes down the trench and the fluid is.
Yes. This lower picture here is an LPP system. An LPP is very similar to a gravel and pipe system, except that it is shallower when it goes in the ground. And when we go out for an inspection of an LPP, we will meet the installer on site to hear the pump and the alarm. And then when we hear the pump, they will put plastic ends at the end of the trench so that when they'll fill the tanks with water for us, so we can see when they level to make sure that each trench is getting about the same amount of effluent when it comes out. The pipes will fill with water, and a lot of times they'll put like a ping pong ball on the top, and we'll watch for the flow to come up so we can make sure that they're pretty well even. The bottom picture on the right-hand corner is of Easy Flow. They're pretty much like a packing peanut. And you're in a 3-bundle sleeve. So that's kind of what they look like. And then on the top right, that is of a bed system. So sometimes a system might be within a trench, but it can also be that it will just be in one big bed system. As a sanitarian, we do have the right to deny of a septic going in. We don't like to do this. We always try to work with people, you know, to try to get them a system. But if it is a new perk that's being done, we do have the right to deny. And when we deny, we often recommend just trying to find somewhere else on the lot that might be a better option. And usually if we deny, it's either due to the perk rate or depending on what the soil looks like or space are the common things. So a little bit about wells. We do issue permits for new installs. I did briefly mention that before. We can also perform a well evaluation. Sometimes I know lending companies will either want a type of evaluation done or sometimes even a water test done, which we also offer through our office. We only test for total coliforms, more broken down into E. coli. What we do is when someone requests a water test, we will go to the home. Typically, we'll go to like a kitchen sink or a bathroom sink. We will collect it and then we go to the state lab. They have an office in Kearneysville. We deliver it there and drop it off. And then they perform the testing and send the results to us. So when we perform a well evaluation, we're just kind of looking at it from above ground, and the main thing we're looking at is to make sure that the well head is in good condition. So on the left-hand side, you can see that the well head has a good sized hole in it. So in that instance, we would not approve the continued use of the well. And we would state that a new wellhead or cap would need to be put on, and then we would make another site visit. Once the homeowner lets us know and repays the fee, we would go back out and see that on the right, they've got a new wellhead on and it's in good condition, it's secured to the well, and then we can approve the continued use. This is just a little picture of our fee schedule. They are posted on our website and they are subject to change. I believe the last time they were updated was July of 2024. So that's just kind of like a main overview of what we do at the health department. My supervisor did reach out to have this meeting. We've been having some issues with some of the kind of smaller lots that are within Berkeley County. One kind of major community, she wanted us to bring up was Potomac Park and Falling Waters. Those lots were originally created for campground situations. However, some of you may or may not know, there is a large problem in that community, in regards to septics and wells. Because the lots are so small, they can't have a septic system and a well because they don't meet the appropriate distances that we require. And unless someone owns multiple lots, they cannot physically fit a septic system and a well on one of the little lots, because some of them are about the size of the septic reserve area that we require, which is 10,000 square feet. So we just kind of wanted to come kind of talk about a few things. Just kind of make sure that, as your buyers and sellers are doing their thing, just kind of make sure you're doing whether you want to do it or have them do it, do the research with us, just make sure and see that everything's gonna be okay for them, and to kind of help us with protecting our groundwater source, because that's a major thing that we're trying to do. That's it. Is there any questions or anything? Yeah.
Excuse me, how long does it usually take you once you get a request to do a septic inspection?
So, like Kim mentioned earlier, it kind of depends on our workload, depending on what the weather is. Usually we try to make site visits within a week, and then we'll try to have the paperwork end within another week. Sometimes we are a little quicker. Right now, Kim mentioned earlier, we're a little backed up. So we rotate our weeks, and right now it's my septic week. The last 2 days, I've probably made almost 20 site visits, and I have another 15 on my desk. So I haven't gotten to any of my paperwork, so I'm a little behind. But like she said, we do try to get it as quick as we can, because, we understand it's a revolving door, the continued business for everyone involved. So, usually within definitely 2 weeks, I think we usually seem to get things back out.
So our septic contingency form was modified, and we have all these additional options like dye test, rod probing, dig up the distribution box. And of course, when we're representing a buyer, we want the septic to be kosher. And then on the seller side, they're worried about the cost of something failing. So trying to figure out like which box do we check. And I think there's some people who just check all of them, not knowing, and that's pretty green, and the seller's freaking out. So in terms of, obviously we can explain these different options to a buyer, but, one thing I ran into recently was someone asked to dig up the distribution box and also camera scope the lines, and they dug up the box and the box crumbled.
And then they had to repair it.
Yeah, and we were in Jefferson County, and we had to get a permit, so then that caused a delay in closing. So I guess from a realtor perspective and from a client perspective, do you have a recommendation on a great way to look at a septic? Obviously something that's underground that does do a good job of telling the condition of it. Versus everyone just checking all these boxes and crossing their fingers.
I can't really say, since we don't really kind of do that type of inspection. Like I said, when we do an eval, we're just looking from above ground.
Probably hiring a septic installer that has the camera to snake the lines is probably the best thing. I don't see what the purpose was in somebody requesting a distribution box being dug up.
Yeah, cause I kinda thought some of them, at least from what I've heard, some of them will just do it from the tank, that their lines are long enough.
Yeah.
You know, as long as it's within a certain distance,
Oh.
that some of the installers will just go from the tank, so I'm kinda surprised that they wanted to go from the distribution box.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a mess every single time that box was checked, I will say that, and, yeah, I mean, so I don't think digging that up is a good option, but again, I'm not.
Yeah, yeah.
Some of them are made out of plastic and some distribution boxes are made out of concrete.
Right.
The concrete ones probably survive being, dug up better than the plastic one, but it also varies, like if the concrete box has been in the ground for a long time, they do lose their integrity.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
are lots of them for years.
Yeah, and then kind of with distribution boxes, well, at least I've heard from different installers, they all have their own preference about them and. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't really have quite the answer.
Okay. We'll keep doing our best. I mean, the
Yeah.
camera scope seems to do a good job, obviously when they pump the tank and they look at the tank, but it is, the fact that we have all these options, it does make it hard to figure
Yeah,
out
yeah.
what is the right one to protect the
Yeah.
buyer from an expensive
Yeah,
modification.
it is, and then especially, I've seen that some septic installers, they'll put observation ports. Kind of at the ends of the lines or kind of at a midway point from the tank, in the field. It's nice when they do that, that makes it easier to access, but then on a lot of the older systems, they don't have the observation
Right.
ports, and then it's hard to kind of judge.
And not all the installers will tell you the same thing. either.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
very
you
true
get different-
too.
You can get 3 different opinions from installers, so
Yeah.
that runs into issues.
Yeah.
When you're buying type of box.
So as Monica mentioned, in Jefferson County, the permit was required to pick up and install the distribution box, that is not significant.
There's not a permit required to figure it out and inspect it, the repair.
Yeah, it's just more so if it needs repaired.
There's supposed to be somebody who will do the repair.
Right.
but not the-
We had a subject inspector reach out to us recently, so that every time that box is checked for them, and if they are requested to do that, that they have to get a permit. And they have to have somebody from the county. So there's a miscommunication somewhere, and I just wanted we just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that might be something we'll go back to our office and check with. But I am not aware of that.
Okay.
For it being,
In a few weeks, we actually are, the health department, well, not the whole health department, but the the inspectors are gonna meet with Jefferson County to kind of talk about some of these, because we get it all the time, well, in Jefferson County, they do this, or they don't do that.
it happens often.
And we do, I mean, put up the state code director that we go by, they don't, because they're so old, they don't cover everything, they don't cover, issues that we deal with today. And, I just lost my train of thought on that. I don't know, go with that, but, we'll see if that comes.
Can you just clarify, because I don't know if everybody in here, when you're representing either a seller or buyer for a lot, and there's a perk, but that buyer is purchasing it and they wanna have a septic permit, if the septic permit has to be in the seller's name because they're the current owner, and it won't transfer to the new buyer. So the new buyer then is gonna have to redo and get that septic permit once they purchase. Correct?
There's different parts to the whole process. When a perk test is done, and we do an evaluation, that's, they do the perk test with the 4 holes, but they also dig the big 6-foot hole. We can the letter can be in anybody's name. In a situation like that, we can write we can go, look at the 6-foot hole, see what the perk rate was, look at the perk hole, do all the, all the evaluations and research and whatnot, and then write a letter approving that particular lot for, class 1 or whatever it is we decide on. The permit to install the septic system does not have to be issued at that time. It can wait until, the buyers have taken ownership of the property. And sometimes people buy, properties and they hold on to them for years before they ever build. So, the permit does not have to be issued until they're actually ready to build. Does that help? Or am I?
Yeah, I just would, sometimes, we say I have a lot listed, it already was in Round Top, it hasn't worked. The buyers make a contingency on there being a septic permit issued.
Oh.
Well, if my seller, that buyer doesn't own the property, so the seller would have to get the septic permit, but then it's
Yeah.
really not gonna transfer to the buyer, they're gonna have to get it themselves anyway.
Correct.
So I think some people don't,
Yeah.
they don't understand
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you're right, we've had that happen probably within the last 6 months or so. I think something on the buyer's end was requiring that, and we had called and explained to both parties that it kind of wasn't transferable. They ended up going ahead and going through with it, and we're like, well, you kind of wasting your money, and it was on a lot of crossings of the Potomac. So that was approved years ago, but they went ahead and the seller went ahead and put in for a permit, and then a couple of weeks later, the buyer ended up applying, and we just voided out the other permit.
I think the issue is, the issue I've experienced is that the buyer is worried that afterward they won't be able to get a permit for whatever reason, because they're not trusting that the perk lives the life of the land.
Right.
So they like this, okay, the permit is here today.
Yeah. And if anything, if someone's being real stubborn about that, you could always offer, that they can call and talk with us. And maybe if they kind of hear it from the source, that might help a little too.
Awesome.
Yeah, because it's really an unnecessary step and an unnecessary expense to require a seller to get a permit that's gonna turn around and be null and void, as soon as closing takes place.
Question, let's say you buy a lot, that's already got perk test and done, let's say that a buyer comes in and says, I wanna move it over here. How far can you vary away from the original before you consider?
Having to restart the process.
Yes.
So what we'll kind of do,
Is it like
It's a
50
little-
feet, 100 feet?
it's a little bit of a gray area.
That's why.
Kind of the last couple we've had, we'll kind of look at it, and try to look, I'm gonna call it a plat of what it's gonna be. If we have a location of that original 6-foot hole, and if they want to reconfigure the shape of the reserve, or, shift it over, but that hole is still in the reserve, we'll take it.
All right.
But now if it's going from this corner of the lot to this corner, then we would have to restart the process.
That reminded me what I was gonna say when I lost my train of thought. The state codes that we have, it does allow each local health department a little bit of leeway to make, decisions on, so we do have some flexibility on, like, for example, your question. It doesn't specifically say in the code, if you move the septic reserve area more than 20 feet, north, south, east, or west, you have to re-perk it. It doesn't say that, so it just, it leaves it up to us to decide if, if you're moving it too far and we think you need a new perk, or you're good.
Also,
And it would come back to me.
on the class 2, 2 acres, correct?
Mhm.
What about a class 1? How many acres?
There's, no. I think I have
It all depends on whether it's
There's
far
no
enough away from the
specific
well.
minimum, but you do have to have 10,000 square foot reserve area, which is, I was surprised by this, 100 feet by 100 feet. Like, to me, 10,000 square feet sounds enormous, but So you have to have your 10,000 square foot reserve area, and that's enough space, or generally enough space for the average house to have their initial septic system plus enough space if it should fail completely to put in a whole new system. God forbid. But anyway, and then of course there has to be enough space, if there's a well on the
Yeah.
property, and that varies, you know, there are some places that have public water, but they have, septic. The well has to be 100 feet from the drain field, 50 feet from the tank, so you just have to be able to fit, you know, everything on the lot within those required setback distances. Do I have that right?
That's class one, right?
Yes.
Class one, yeah.
Class one.
Yeah.
And then, class two, just kind of piggybacking, they have the same requirement on the SRA. They still have the 10,000 square foot reserve. That's kind of the general consensus is there's always the 10,000 square foot reserve.
Yes.
When Michaela reached out to me about you guys coming out, which we're thankful for you guys being here, she mentioned there had been some concerns, about the public coming and had issues with realtors that their septic system, they bought a home and it was undersized. Is there anything that you guys can share about that we should be?
I mean, once somebody goes to closing on a property, it's a done deal if they bought a house where the system is undersized by today's standards. When we see old records, we look at numbers of square feet and linear feet of lines, and we're like, how did they come up with this? And then they were, back in the day, whatever year that was, they were counting the number of toilets and bathtubs and things like that, where now it's based on number of bedrooms. I'm getting sidetracked, but
I just know from when I've kind of had it come up or someone's, interested in a property, they've called and done research, and then they'll kind of ask about it. I'll just kind of say, well, it was installed at this time, let's say for a 3-bedroom home. At some point in time, they either added a bedroom or somehow it got classified as a 4-bedroom. I made the recommendation, we can do a formal letter saying that it needs to be brought up to current standards. Like Kim said, it's not like we go out kind of looking for places and checking everything. But as things, come through, especially through research, we'll say, it was only sized for 3 bedrooms. If it's a 4-bedroom, it needs to be brought up to code because it is undersized. But unless it's failing, we can't make it be brought up to code.
Okay, force the issue. If there's a situation where somebody wants to get a building permit to add a garage or something like that, we usually have to do a septic evaluation, and it'll come up sometimes in situations like that. And in the letter that we write after the evaluation, we generally, have to require the septic system be brought up to current standards because they are planning on, adding onto the house or something.
So, then, we can write the letter, but then, if it's the buyer kind of, if they're the ones that are, if they're willing to do the work once they've bought it, or if they want to make it a requirement for the seller that it needs to be done before they buy it. I guess it's just kind of how we end up kind of leaving it.
Can you explain, because I don't know if everybody knows, how the process is to request records on a property, like if we're listing it or we have a buyer interested in buying it?
Yes, so what you'll want to do is either you can call our office or stop by. We're on 122 Waverly Court. We did bring some pamphlets to leave. And it is a $25 fee. And what, you'll just come see one of our office assistants, Mary or Kathy. They will take, the information of the lot, and get other information from you. And then what they'll do is they will go through our records and find anything that they have on that lot. Whether it be, you know, if it's a perk letter, if it's a system that's already in the ground, they will pull, all of the file per se of that lot, whether it's septic info, well info. And then they will email you a copy of everything that we have, so that you'll see kind of everything that we have on our end.
The risky thing with that is that if it's an older home, older like, you know, something built in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even early 80s, there's a good chance, maybe not up to 80s, but there's a good chance we might not have records, even though we started keeping records in the 70s. That would have been anything built, you know, so, but anything probably from like 1990 on, for sure, we should have something.
And then I will put out a disclaimer, all of our records are paper. So we have, our file room probably has 20 plus file cabinets. So, and we also have moved from, I guess it was before I was with the health department, I guess at one point they were downtown, before they moved to Waverly Court. And then since we moved from Waverly Court, we've moved across the building. We just had an expansion done back in the spring. Occasionally paperwork we don't find, sometimes.
Stuff that we know should be there.
Yes, stuff we know that should be there that we don't find, so that does happen occasionally. And if it's septic records, that are needed and we don't find records, we do have a policy, that, or not really a policy, a procedure. If someone needs the sizing done, they can get with a septic installer to dig up the ends of the septic lines. And then we will come out and do an evaluation. We will measure what we see, and then do our math back at the office, and size it based on what we see. And then we will write it in a letter form, and then that will kind of create a new file for that lot.
Is anything ever gonna go digital? Like it took forever, for just like personal property and all that stuff. It's like
Yes.
kind of slowly going digital.
So it has been in the talks, from what I've heard a couple of years ago, they tried to go digital. It was just kind of too much for the staff that they had. I know that since Michaela has taken the chief position, she brings it up very often, that she wants to make everything go digital. I can't say that there's a time frame, but we would all like if it went digital.
Lisbon, you probably, yeah.
Yes.
Your records.
Yes, yes.
So I probably shouldn't tell family secrets, but everything is filed in alphabetical order by the owner's name. And sometimes they have to request, we just call them cards, I don't know exactly, but request information from the tax office, yeah, with a history of property owner and, you know, so it could be wild.
I think I heard at one point in time they were in the name of the installers. I think I heard some.
I know, they're.
They installed it.
Like this time. And yeah, it's.
And then, of course, I've often helped, Kathy and Mary do research, and sometimes it'll be interesting because the way addresses have changed. You know, Route 5, Route 1, and now it's got a more specific name. And if they didn't write tax map, parcel number, all of that, it's kind of looking at it and using your best judgment if it matches.
Yeah.
Especially if it wasn't in a subdivision.
Yes, yes, yes. So if there's ever a time, I think Kathy and Mary are both very good that if they're questioning something, They'll send what they think it is, and then if, you're looking at it and you think, I don't think this is it, you can always just reach back out to them and say, do you have anything else? Because that has happened before.
I've had Mary send me like the whole file. She's like,
Yes.
yeah, like putting the puzzle together.
Yes, that's what it is a lot of the time.
It would take probably a couple full-time people, probably a couple years at least, to get everything. Yeah, scanned and filed in a more user-friendly system. Might even be a few years full-time.
Are you all available to come to offices and speak?
We did a couple of, similar, kind of add a little bit to the presentation, but, in the summer, we can't remember now, a couple different places. I do bring, just general, health department pamphlets, all the DVDs. It's got all of our contact information on the front there, and then on the inside is, one of the in the middle, the website. There's a lot of information on the website. There's even forms on the website, applications for septic permits and stuff like that. So,
And then, of course, since we're here, we do have clinical services as well. We do like to share that, and then, that'll all be on our website, and then, just the kind of, other services that like sanitarians offer, just to kind of explain why we have 21 business days. We're, not only are we inspecting, septic and wells, we're doing restaurants, we do hotels, we do schools, daycares, mobile home parks. We're doing a lot of different, kinds of inspections, so then that's why, sometimes we might get a little backed up turning work back in, just because we are doing more than just well and septics.
right now, there's, our official job title is sanitarian, preferred environmental health specialist, or environmental health inspector, but anyway, there's 3 of us fully functioning right now, 2 that are in training, but the 3 that are fully functioning, Michaela has become, the chief, our supervisor, so she's got other duties to do. So each week, there's only 1 person assigned to all of the septic work, and then the others are doing inspections of these other places. So it's not like all of us are working on septic every week. It'd be nice, at least lately.
I'm not gonna lie, I like the fact you all are women.
And also, this is just a little side note, but, the Berkeley County Health Department and the Morgan County Health Department are under the same administration, so you'll see on the pamphlet there's Morgan County. But in case you do any work, business out there, we come under the same administration, but they do have a separate building in Berkeley Springs. But,
So I don't think they have inspections out.
They do. You guys do Morgan County too, or?
So right now, we have 1 inspector in Morgan County, and if he is off, sometimes, one of us will go up to do some of the septic if it's real heavy. Otherwise, right now, we just have 1 sanitarian up there.
Why there's such a shortage?
it's budget.
Yeah, budget and the training process for a sanitarian, technically is a year, but in all honesty, it's a little more than a year. And then, kind of more recent years, they're seeing numbers grow, not only in Berkeley County, also Morgan County. And we would like to hire more, but as Kim said, the budget tends to be, kind of a problem. And then also kind of getting applicants can be an issue too. Anything else?
Well, thank you so much for having us and, letting us share our info.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Let me entertain questions if you're, unsure of something. Call the health department or happy to help you.
Thank you. I think it's good to know that you guys wanted to come and be in front of us, but that you're welcome to us being able to
Yeah.
reach out to you. And we're having clients go to the source. Hasn't always been that easy, so.
Yeah, that's the other thing, if you want to just, kind of like, especially with somebody who's like a little leery about. Are you sure about that?
Thank you guys again, and, just a reminder, next month's Lunch and Learn is November the 12th. And I think if you caught, Jackie mentioned, from cross country about hat. So we actually have the hat representative, Corey Roman from City of Martinsburg, coming to, speak a little bit more about that program, how it can help your clients. And also hoping that he's gonna bring the actual inspector. So as part of the hat program, there's an inspection. So to learn from them what they're looking for in these properties, to make sure they meet those guidelines. So I think that'll be a great, program for you guys to come be a part of next month, and Blue Ridge is gonna be our lunch sponsor. So thanks for attending. So take your plate to go.
Yes, that's blessed.